One of the things that interests me most about Gacha as a genre is the disparity between our accounts. It doesn't matter what game we're playing, your account is very rarely ever going to look like mine for better or for worse, and especially if we're both low spending or free to play. This idea that we're enjoying completely varied versions of the same game is what keeps me engaged with the genre. It makes each gacha feel like its own sort of mini roguelite or nuzlocke. And because I have a few of these games under my, belt at this point, I'm headhunting gachas. Every once in a while something will come out and it'll be big and have a hype release like the new JJK Phantom Parade, and I'm like, I'm gonna get in there, I'm gonna try it out, I'm gonna see how free to play friendly it is, and we're just gonna have a pretty good time. But entering these different communities, as you pass between gacha, you sort of start to collect some ideas about how the average player interfaces with this genre, this very predatory, unfair development cycle. And so while this video in concept is about the JJK Phantom Parade release on global, it's also just about the genre as a whole. You see, if you're familiar with JJK in general, maybe you've watched the anime, and if you've read the manga, Utah's a pretty hyped character. Everyone loves Utah to one degree or another. He's coming out in this game. He was scheduled initially on JP for a late November release, and he would have stood alone without any other sort of infringing on his hype banner. That said, a Megumi has since come out who has the first active domain, it seems like, in the game, and is an extremely good character on JP as well. And players are sort of having a meltdown at this accelerated pace because they can't get every single thing that they wanted. They can't scrape together stones for all of these releases. Fine. So I guess the question to them is, I have 30,000 of the cursed power sort of system that the game uses to grade how powerful your characters each are on a team. And I'm completely free to play. I haven't spent anything on this game. I've just been playing the login bonus week that's been happening. Even my Gojo, who has one awakening, I got a Gojo from both tickets, which means I literally missed out on having an extra, S tier unit. They'll never come back. I'm never getting that free to play ticket back. So my Gojo awakened, which is good. I mean, he's strong, but I would rather have had an extra strong character, What ends up happening in these games a lot of the time is people watch content creators, people watch other free-to-play players, people see their posts, people see their pulls, and they go, man, if I just pull a little more, that could be me. And the answer to that is, no, it could fucking not, because your RNG is not their RNG, and it's all just numbers, big dog. So people get really in the weeds when it comes to free-to-play gacha, saying, it's not a good free-to-play system because I can't get every single thing for free and compete with the whales. And it's like, that's not true. Dokkan has a terrible free-to-play model, not because it's not generous, it's because the things they give you to complete the game free-to-play are terrible. The units are bad. They're bad. It doesn't matter how good a Dokkan unit is when it's released free-to-play, it's probably fucking underwhelming. Because HSR released Dr. Ratio, and Epic 7 allows you to pull the best characters in the game for free. It's just not comparable. Say tomorrow Dokkan releases what is essentially a Carnival or a DFE free-to-play unit that can lead a team by itself, is strong, and helps you put together a valuable base to then use some of your gacha pulls to add to that team, and then, maybe you can clear the hardest events with some RNG, because a lot of the time when it comes to free-to-play characters and underpowered teams or low spending teams, you'll need some RNG to get through, but you still can. Dokkan doesn't have this. The reason I bring this up in relation to JJK Phantom Parade is I haven't struggled at all with the game's content because I've just spent the resources they give me and it's easy. And maybe that'll change in like a month or 2 months or 3 months when the games are caught up, because it seems like they're trying to catch the games up. And this was the case with Dokkan as well. When people said, I don't want to sing because I don't want to be caught up because I want this mythical foresight, quote unquote. I'm sorry, but foresight isn't better than getting to be an active participant in new releases, in hype. A lot of the waiting around that exists on Global Dokkan for the last 2 years that I've played comes from just being behind. And even the start of this year was so fucking bad that Global Dokkan will be considered to have a pretty unfortunate 2024, not because of releases, but because the first half of the year was a stalemate. And mind you, JJK Phantom Parade putting out a bunch of banners in a row and really taxing your willpower is not great. It's predatory. That's the case with Gacha though. they're gonna be pretty anti-player. And to act like you're going to get this like handout that is totally unique to this IP that is super successful like JJK, go play Epic 7, dog. Like, this is a game made from an extremely popular anime series that's manga just ended. It's capitalizing on the peak of its hype. I'm sure it wants to be around for a while longer, but it's just not going to happen. That said, if you're playing free to play, you have all of the tools to beat this game. I'm beating this game as we speak. I'm autoing it right now. It's pretty easy. And it goes back to the example of something like Epic 7, where my characters all have pretty good gear. You know, you have to farm gear in that game. They will never have whale gear. I will never outspeed a whale. And that game has a competitive scene. That game has tournaments that are hosted. My characters cannot compete with theirs. I am not a whale. I was low spending free to play, and now I'm just completely free to play upon returning to the game after a 2-year break. That said, because I spend my resources smartly, because I understand that there is a wall, being in Masters or Legend in that game is about as great as you can get as a free-to-play player without investing more. And if that's the upper limit, which is like a rank or two below the highest tiers, then what's the problem? Now imagine taking that mindset to a game like JJK Phantom Parade or Dokkan or even Dragon Ball Legends, which doesn't have really any competitive integrity, essentially. The reason I only really played Dragon Ball Legends around anniversary time for that game is because pulling the best anniversary unit grants you about a week or two, maybe 3, of having some fun with a cool Legends Limited or even an Ultra if you get really lucky. If you do not, and you are just like marching through that game with 3 stars, 5 stars, whatever the case, it gets so tough. It gets so tough to even compete because there's no gear. It's just purely based on how much you pull a character. Man, that game could be a slog. That's the free-to-play fault in Dragon Ball Legends, because I can't even play that game without pulling multiple of units a lot of the time. JJK Phantom Parade, I pulled my group. I didn't even do the pre-registration gacha. I'm good. Essentially what ends up happening in a lot of gacha spaces is that players create this wall in their head that they can't overcome, that they can't surmount no matter what they do, and their characters are all perfect, they just can't do it because they're power crept. In Dokkan, this is very real. In Phantom Parade, this is not currently real. I've been making small adjustments to my team over time, just leveling up grades, getting them to 8, getting them levels, etc, etc. Nothing's really changed for me. Gojo's still the best character. You could pull him with the reroll ticket, and you could always select him with the reroll ticket. There's never a chance that you miss it on Gojo. The rest is just supplementary. It's not necessary. So when this changes is when you get to things like Red Zone in Dokkan, where the power creep is just so high that if they don't provide characters or ways to pull those characters, you'll just get swept. There will never be any numbers that you can put in front of the other numbers to make them work, because Dokkan is not built well as a free-to-play game. You can play it free-to-play. I play it free-to-play / low spending. I played the $8 for the sub. But as a free-to-play experience, it's not good. All the free-to-play characters you pull essentially are terrible. Most of them are just, the greatest ones are just okay. They're never going to match up to the banner units, unlike something in Epic 7, unlike something in Honkai Star Rail. You know what I mean? And there is currently a tower mode that's missing from JJK Phantom Parade's global release, and we'll get that and maybe I'll reconsider. But the thing is, that's like all based on context. Contextually, right now, in the game, as you do events, as you spend energy, there is nothing stopping you. There is no way your pulls are so bad, quote unquote, that you can't progress in this game. You need to match it up. And if you're free to play, when it scales you and it gets too hard and maybe it's too unfair and maybe the pacing is all over the place, then you can quit. Then you can just drop it. But what is standing in your way that you're missing out on right now? Megumi just released with his domain. I did 2 pulls on it, didn't get them, went, guess I'll try for Utah later. Didn't matter. Because ultimately, it did not change my account. Because why would it? Why would seeing other people pull Utah and Megumi change my experience if nothing is stopping my current cast of characters from completing the game anyway? The reason this functions as a general gacha video instead of just like a Phantom Parade video or a Dokkan video specifically is because look at the heroes units that just released on global Dokkan and JP Dokkan. They're just not good enough. They can clear events. The team can clear events. The Goku can go on other teams, but they're just not good enough because they're gonna get aged out. They're gonna be useless, and then you're gonna feel this like, oh, I missed out on the collection aspect of pulling heroes. So, in a few months, we get Anniversary, and those characters are going to make it so that you never have to pull for anything else in the entire year, because that's how Anniversary works. In Dokkan, it's so built around these huge landmark celebrations that if you only ever pull on Anniversary, get the easy A's, Worldwide, get the easy A's, you could never pull between those months and your account would never feel it. So this is a big rambling way of saying try to reel in your FOMO, your quote unquote FOMO, because I promise that whatever feeling of missing out on these characters you're experiencing isn't actually going to affect your progress unless you start like spiraling your resources into nothing. I hope some of this put into perspective how I approach gacha, why I'm able to walk between gacha without, breaking the bank and getting like hopelessly addicted to gambling. Like it really isn't that deep. Like in totality, you're missing out on nothing. I guess that's the biggest thing to take away. A character flies by, the game scales too hard, then it's just not a game you should be putting time into. But as of right now, Dokkan's fine, it has pity, just save your resources. I promise you'll be able to clear things. Phantom Parade at this point is fine. Save your resources, you'll be able to clear things. And this could change in a month, 2 months, 3 months, etc, etc. Try not to sweat it. As for today, I've been lone. Subscribe to join the club, like if you like the video. We're all gonna make it. Peace.